is in the fields after the visit to our capital by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mali. We talked a lot about the economy, the trade turnover, despite the quite a good growth within the last 3 years. Of course, it does not correspond to the potential we have if we talk about the figures, if we talk about the numbers. In this regard, we have agreed to promote the cooperation in such areas is the mineral extraction, geologic reconnaissance, infrastructure, agriculture, internet technology, and we paid special attention to practical aspects of supplying from Russia essential under the conditions of the unlawful sanctions of wheat, mineral fertilizers and oil products. We have also talked about good dynamics of military and military technical ties. We have a positive assessment of the cooperation and humanitarian area, including training Malian personnel and Russian institutions on a number of specialties. We expressed our gratitude to Malian friends for the information about the current developments in their countries, about steps taken by the Malian authorities to achieve internal stability, to create sustainable conditions to hold free and democratic elections. We know that the heavy burden for Malian economy is still the restrictions introduced in the beginning of this year by the Western African countries, their economy union and restrictions of the European Union. It is worsening the difficult situation of the Malian people, and it making it more difficult to resolve the problems in Mali. The biggest of this problem is the terrorist threat. We know what sanctions are ourselves, and we can say that they are not helping to achieve the goals that are set by the organizers of such unlawful sanctions pressure. It is obvious that decisions by Paris and their Western allies are not facilitated by the decision to stop the counter-terrorist activities and to withdraw the anti-terrorist troops. We can see the threat of creation, the enclaves of unlawfulness, where the militants of illegal groups are going to start their activities that have been preparing for such actions because it will threaten the territorial integrity of the country. And we have said that on a number of occasions to our French counterpart. There is dissatisfaction about the desire of the Malian authorities to address external countries is just a relapse of colonial concept that they should refrain from. We reiterated the willingness of Russia as the Permanent Security Council member to continue to help with normalization of the situation in Mali, to help Bamako on bilateral ground, also in improving the combat readiness of the Malian troops and training military servicemen and private security officers. But talking about regional agenda, we regularly exchange opinions regarding the situation in Sahara-Sahel region and in the West African region, including Guinea, Burkina Faso, Chad, and also Libya. We share the same opinion with our Malian friends. To settle the internal crisis in Africa should be done by the Africans themselves and in the interests of the Africans, and the objectives of the job of the world community is to help them with that. That's what Russia is doing. I thanked our Malian friends for supporting Russian resolutions during the latest session of the UN General Assembly. All our initiatives were supported by the Malian delegation. We agreed to consolidate coordination in the UN and in the other international organizations. That's what we plan to do. In particular, along the lines of the recently established New York platform, the Group of Friends for Protection of the United Nations Charter. We also discussed the situation in Ukraine and around Ukraine, including within the context of yesterday's meeting of the Security Council of the UN on the matters of food security in the world, where Western countries once again tried to put the blame on everyone else but themselves, and then they try to assert that the crisis that was practically brought about exclusively by their efforts is only rooted within the crisis that we can witness around Ukraine, and they blaming everything on the Russian Federation, obviously. And we have reminded our Malian friends today that what we talked about, what actually happened in Ukraine throughout the last recent years, including the 8 years when Ukraine categorically refused to implement the resolution of the UN on resolving the situation in Donbass, and we explained the reasons why we had no other choice but to launch the special military operation, during which, by the way, all our concerns about what the West was trying to turn Ukraine into, they were confirmed 100%. That's why all the goals that were set by President Putin, first of all, on protecting people, protecting civilians in Ukraine, first of all in Donbass, and stopping from having threats, direct threats from Ukraine for our country. These objectives will be achieved. Once again, I would like to thank our counterparts for these useful negotiations held and for the invitation to visit Bamako. We will act on it for sure. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister Lavrov, for this meeting, for meeting me here in Moscow, for hospitality extended to us, and for such a warm welcome. It's always a great pleasure to travel to Russia. Hopefully the next meeting will take place in Bamako. We are looking forward to seeing you, the Malian government looking forward to seeing you, and they constantly asking me when will Minister Lavrov visit us so we can set a date. For example, I understand that under the conditions you are in now, it is quite difficult, but I think that we have privileged partnership between our countries, and every time we underscore that Russia is not a new friend of Mali's. When Mali was becoming independent, struggling for its independence, Russia was among the first countries that started working with us. And our cooperation has been ongoing ever since, and it's becoming more and more consolidated, stronger and stronger, and we need to improve these ties further on, not because of the profits that we can gain from it, but because of the principles both of our countries share in international relations, in foreign affairs, in interference into internal affairs of the countries, domestic affairs of the countries, and all these matters are important to strengthen our ties. And like I said, we need to strengthen our bilateral cooperation and security. We have a very serious military technical cooperation going on between the law enforcement agencies of both our countries. Russian Federation is cooperating with us now, and we can see the outcome, the fruit born from this cooperation on the ground. There are a lot of territories that were liberated. Hundreds of people managed to return to their homes, and that's why Russia is hitting all our requests about weapon supplies, for example, and they always are present there on the ground, and they give us strategic support, and all these processes are going very well, unfolding very well. We appreciate this work a lot, and we appreciate Russia as a strategic partner from security point of view to protect our population, and of course to protect our territorial integrity as well. And we also discussed the challenges when we met today, first of all, from the point of view of security, because this is the foundation that we work upon. From political point of view, I would like to thank you for your constant support for Mali on international platforms and for in the UN and other international organizations, so that Mali could protect its interests, defend its interests, political matters and security matters to strengthen. It's important to strengthen them, but economy matters are also important. Diversity of economy ties. Today's visit is taking place under special political environment and under a special situation, but I think we can work together to develop infrastructure, and we will be able to address companies, to ask Russian infrastructure companies to build railroads in Mali. We have held meaningful and helpful talks about this matter. We also talked about uninterrupted supplies to Mali of fuel, of the essentials, so that they could be delivered to Mali with the help of the Russian state, so that these supplies were carried out. Next important thing is cooperation in agriculture. Mr. Lavrov talked about his concerns regarding the food security in the world globally. Our country is very much concerned by the fertilizers, supplies, and trade. We would like to see all the restrictions lifted so that countries could continue receiving these supplies and of fuel as well, because without the fuel, it's impossible to operate. So we would like to see these restrictions lifted. In general, we talked about sanctions, about specific problems related to Ukraine. As in Mali, we wouldn't want to see the resolution of this conflict depending on lifting or introducing sanctions, because sanctions, economic sanctions, is an unlawful embargo, because we also suffering the sanctions. We are not in the position to introduce sanctions against other countries because we think it's not helping to resolve any issues, because to achieve a solution, we think the problem should be resolved via dialogue, via political dialogue, and with Russia as well, because no country could not be excluded from the regional or international system, because we need to hear the voice of everyone to find the solution. And it is true for Russia and for Mali within the context of the relations regionally. Sanctions is not an option. It is not a solution. On the other way around, it complicates things, complicates achieving political solutions. And you mentioned that Mali and President Koita has always reiterated their willingness to respect constitutional order, to provide security of constitutional order, because despite the difficulties in Mali, and we have reaffirmed this, because of interference of the Western states in Libya, 60% of the territory is now a conflict zone, which results in deep problems. And via elections, we could have been able to resolve problems. We could find a solution on how to resolve this problem. And we have some progress, so our position are now closer to each other, and we think we can achieve a compromise within the transitionary period of 24 months. I think it's a realistic forecast, and it's an optimal plan, so that we could achieve be successful in a number of such issues, of outstanding issues. And I also think that Mr. Lavrov also talked about this previously, both in African Union and other regional alliances. We should put African solutions first and foremost. In Mali, we have no problems with these regional organizations, but they constantly influenced by the non-African forces. and they are promoting solutions that are not good for Africans. We need to go back to our own organizations, African organizations, to strengthen solidarity, to make all decisions made within Africa emanate from Africa, and so that we could achieve solutions. And I think we spoke in general terms, but together we will be able to work on, with the support of the Russian Federation as well, to strengthen our economic ties and trade cooperation in various fields, something that Minister Lavrov mentioned. I'm at your disposal and I'm ready to take your questions. Thank you. Colleagues, now the time to ask your questions. News.ru, please. Hello, News.ru, Sonia Rustamova. The question for both ministers. Malian authorities said that on May 12th there was an attempt of coup d'etat organized by a Western state. Does Malian government have any evidence that it was Western state-led attempt? And question from Mr. Lavrov. Russia is becoming more active in cooperating with Mali and other countries of traditionally French influence. Is there any risk that the confrontation in Mali between Russia and France will increase? And does Moscow plan to negotiate with Paris regarding cooperation in these countries? I can answer this question. You know the statements, claims about an attempt of such coup. A couple of months ago, there was an attempt to destabilize Malian government in a lot of ways. We wanted to address regional organization back in January, like I said, when against Mali, economic embargo was introduced against Mali, and many people wanted to see our government overthrown. That was their idea. And many people said that within 2 weeks of embargo, the people will take it to the streets and the government will be overthrown. But it did not happen. So there were numerous attempts, I have to say. For instance, they wanted to instigate a conflict between Mali and one of its neighbors, for example, with Mauritania, and some people even died. But I think overall, the circumstances we live under, that there are daily attempts of coup d'etat, because the only problem that we have is that Malians decided to become masters of their own destiny. They decided to develop their country according to their own vision, and I think partners haven't understood it yet, that the world has changed. That's why their attempts to change the government, to replace the government, they want to replace it with the institutional rules or using the institutional rules or by any other means. And these countries are organizations that claim that they are protecting democracy. Unfortunately, they are carrying out attempts like that. Their official and unofficial means. In any case, we have some suspicions that it's a foreign force that is trying to carry out such attempts. But in any case, I'm confident that there are many ways to destabilize the situation that is being implemented now. But most important thing for us is the support from the Malian people. Despite the sanctions, our people stand united. The people are still calm, and the Malians share the vision of our government about the independence and sovereignty of our state, about the chance to provide our own security and territorial integrity. But Mali is still open to cooperate with all the partners who respect these principles, because we do not shut ourselves off from anyone. I agree with what have been said by my counterparts, since there was something about relations between Russia and France in regard with the developments in Africa. Here is what I have to say in this regard. It is clear to us, but it's not something that we like, the attempts by France and other European Union countries to their desire to have a dominating role in any region of the world, including Europe, by the way, because, for example, when Russia was developing strong ties, and it continues to develop strong ties with Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and other countries of the Western Balkans, already back then, the higher-ranked official of the European Union, Federica Mogherini, was claiming that the European Union is concerned with the attempts of Russia to come to the Western Balkans, because Western Balkans, it is up to European Union to decide what's happening there. It's territory of European Union. And speaking about Africa, when last September I traveled to New York for the General Assembly of the UN, I met Jean-Yves Le Drian, the Foreign Minister of France, and we also met with Joseph Borrell, the Chief of Diplomacy of the European Union. Both of them told me, and in quite a tense fashion, they expressed their concerns that Russia is developing contacts and ties with Africa, in particular with Mali. And they said that they defended this position in a colonial key, I have to say, that Africa is the zone of responsibility, zone of influence, zone of interest of the European Union. Of course, I cannot accept arguments like that, because that's a pure colonialism, neo-colonialism. It's an ability to give up old habits that brought Africa to the dire state it is in. An echo of this colonial past. We can feel it still now, looking at the borders between African states that were created without taking into consideration any factors other than colonial properties of those European nations, and other difficulties our African friends are experiencing now. That's why I brushed off these kind of claims. I reminded our partners from the European Union that they themselves, when we talk about territories around Russian Federation, if we speak about who and where were historically present, so they themselves, when we speak about the territories around the Russian Federation, they draft all kind of strategies, Arctic strategy of the EU, Central Asian strategy of the EU, and then they start to suggest these strategies to the countries in the region. And I'm not even talking about how deeply Europeans penetrated Ukraine. And 4 years after Ukraine has become independent, they have been developing all kind of projects, all kind of programs. And we have never had any complaints about that, in regard that they are so active, so freely, right under the Russia's belly. So these double standards is something that is very sad to see. We are willing to talk to our counterparts, French counterparts, or anyone else, to talk about any international affairs on one condition, that we are going to do it in civilized manner, based on respect for the interests of each other, and mainly based on the respect of any regions and any countries. In this particular case, on Mali, to choose their partners freely without anyone dictating their will to them. And in this context, our French counterparts are trying to tell Mali who they can talk with or who they cannot talk with. It is unacceptable. And it is not a good thing. It's not saying a lot of good things about the French Republic and the French manners. I've got a question for both ministers. First of all, my first question is to Foreign Minister of Mali. So, like it's been said, so Mali intends to get fuel from Russia. So is Russia ready to give these energy resources to Mali. And my next question is, are you satisfied with the outcome of your visit, of your mission to Russia? Thank you. The main focus during today's visit of Minister Diop was our bilateral ties and the prospects of their development in all areas. First of all, in trade and economics, and the minister's delegation included the heads of other ministries as well, including the transport ministry, infrastructure, economy and finance ministries, the mining ministry, energy ministry, and water resources ministries. So the composition of the delegation shows that how serious our intention to achieve concrete agreements. Though the delegation held yesterday and will have more contacts with the agencies and ministries of the Russian Federation responsible for these matters. And from what I think, we have already outlined some results. We are going to promote all these agreements within the foreign ministry, being a coordinator of all these efforts of the ties with the foreign countries, in this case with our friends from Mali. And the negotiations were also about the matters that you mentioned, supplies of wheat, fertilizers, oil products. All these matters are now being developed within the corresponding ministries. And after this visit, we are going to come up with certain suggestions and proposals for the government of the Russian Federation. Thank you for your question. First of all, I would like to say that Russia has always been and is still a reliable partner of Mali, and we have already had good cooperation in security, and Mali is carrying out all its obligations in Russia, is satisfied with that, and this time we have come here to request support on supplies to Mali. We have very fruitful conversation. We talked to certain companies and enterprises about partnership with Russia. As for partnership with Russia, we have had a good start so that we could continue working for the good of the Malian people. Yes, I'm leaving being positive that we have concrete plans to provide uninterrupted supplies to Mali. Thank you.